Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach, and SuperCoach is now out. Everyone's getting stuck into their side, so I thought I'd give you a handful of players that are no-brainers, guys, to lock into your sides, absolute must-haves. Now, of course, they're not going to be your drafties and things like that because we can't really predict those. These are just 5 guys that I think should be in everybody's starting lineup and guys that are quite simply must-haves. Now, it's probably not going to be absolute rocket science for many of you out there. I mean, they're obviously pretty clear-cut picks because I think they are quite obvious selections, but nonetheless, I think these are 5 guys in no particular order that you should definitely be having in your side, and if you don't, I feel you're not taking it too seriously, but try and mount a case against it if you will. But I think these guys are as good a selection as we could possibly do at this stage, and I think they'll be in many a side. So first off, we have Taylor Adams. Now, of course, we can get Adams as a defender at 527,000, which is an absolute great option for us because anytime we can get a midfielder into either our defence or forward lines, and particularly the back line, because traditionally you won't get too many of those options in the back line. Our forward line certainly does produce those quite often, but in this case we have Adams, who's absolutely going to play midfield. He's a contested beast, he's on the rise, and what I like the most is he's in that real peak of his career, or at least heading into what should be his prime. He's played your 70 odd games, he's about 23 I think. He's had some good footy under his belt, hasn't quite got his body right of late, but he showed his scoring ability, back-to-back averages of 97, and I think he's quite simply an absolute lock. He'll play your inside midfielder for the Collingwood Football Club, and that's exactly what we want to see. You know, I think he'll be probably a number 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 defender. I'd certainly pay good money to think they'd be in the top 2. I think probably he, Doherty and Shaw will certainly battle it out for that top mantle in our back line. But as far as I'm concerned, when you're picking your defence, you start it and build it around Adams. He's as obvious as it gets, I feel, given that not only is he just a midfielder, but he's going to get better. He plays a very SuperCoach friendly role, and I think we could possibly even see 3 figures from Adams in 2017. Moving on to Diane Beam, who I think will be in many sides as well, and for good reason. He's an absolute lock as far as many are concerned, and it's for the price tag, 432,000, for a guy that we know can not only average 3 figures, but 110 plus. Now, in the past, he has struggled with his body, which is somewhat concerning, but I think the reward far outweighs the risk. I mean, the fact that we could get him at that sort of price and he could be a top 10 midfielder, which I think is very likely. The early reports is that he is having a great pre-season. I know a lot of that gets thrown around at this time of year, but for Beams to hear that, all we need to know is that he's getting to every session, he's looking good, and that'll be good enough for us, because he's a bloke who has averaged 115. He's even averaged 120 odd in the past when he was at Collingwood, but he's the main man in the midfield for Brisbane, and he's an absolute superstar of the game. Often a little underrated now that he's gone north, but I think at that price tag you simply cannot refuse. I mean, he's going to average great numbers. The slight concern is his body, but as I say, we put a little asterisk there and say, well, look, if he's getting through the pre-season well, you just can't say no. Obviously, the opportunity for him to average big numbers at that sort of price range is just too hard to refuse as far as I'm concerned. So he'll be in many teams, and rightly so. Another fella who'll be in many a midfield is Nat Fyfe. And as we all know, Fyfe, absolute superstar, has also had his troubles with the body, particularly last year where I think it was only the 5 games he played. Obviously, he has had quite a bit of trouble with that leg, but we'd like to see him back to his best, not just for SuperCoach, but for football in general, and I expect to see that. Of course, with Beams and Fyfe, it's about seeing that they are getting to pre-season training sessions and looking good. We're not just going to pick guys who are returning from injury but are still struggling, so it goes without saying that we need to see and be convinced by their pre-season that they are just getting there. But I'm not going to be worried about any, NAB challenge numbers or whatever the competition's called now. If Fyfe plays, if he's looking good and fit, he's in my team, whether he gets 5 touches or 25 touches. I'm not going to be too concerned about his form throughout the pre-season because I think we know what he's capable of. Brownlow medalist, absolute gun, possible to average 120. I mean, we'd take your 115 obviously, but I think he's just such a gun player that he could certainly return to some of his best. He'll cost us $573,000, which is pretty reasonable. Of course, he didn't get the discount, but I think the fact that he did have a couple of poorer games last year, as well as a bit of trouble with the injury, which always affects his consistency and therefore scoring, obviously puts him at a pretty good price. Even though no discount, I think for Fife, you'd certainly consider him nonetheless. So two guys that not only do we believe can average good numbers, but some of the absolute best. I mean, sometimes when you're looking at guys who are perhaps below the odds and you go, oh, he could probably average 105. Take Mark Murphy, for example. He's at a very good price, $432. That's a bargain price, but the little concern that comes with him is, well, am I going to have to get rid of him at some point? Murphy's a good player. If we're predicting averages, you'd probably say around your 105, 106, which is great, and he'll make your money. But I don't think we have that concern with Fife and Beam. So they tick both boxes. They're at good prices, and not only will they go 106, they could even go 10 points more. I think we can probably bank that if they're up and going, that they're 110 plus players, which just makes that decision to select them so much easier. Another fella, number 4 on the list, in no particular order mind you, is Todd Goldstein. I think, again, a proven star and perhaps below the odds as far as price goes. You'll have to pay $588 for Todd, but we all know what he's capable of. Of course, 2 years back averaged, 128, nudging the 130 mark, which is unbelievable stuff. We know that when Goldstein has the ruck on his own and is fully fit, he's probably the best ruckman in the comp. He and Gawn, probably at their peak of the powers. It's a flip of the coin who's the number one man, but I think the fact that we can get Goldstein at a pretty nice price, and the reason being is the fact that he did struggle with a bit of knee soreness and things throughout the back end of last year, and his scores did reflect that. I think he went from averaging around 110 or 11, I'm just sort of guessing here, and then the back half of the year it dropped to about 98, 99 from memory. So obviously it did affect him a little bit. Majak Dor, I don't think he's going to worry him too much. Goldstein likes to ruck solo, and I think Dor, if anything, will just chime in from time to time and play a forward role. Plus Dor did cop an injury throughout the pre-season already, so I think Goldstein being in our ruck combination is going to be in many. More of the discussion will be about, do you go with Gawn, do you go with Grundy and things like that. But Goldstein is an absolute lock as far as I'm concerned. He's consistent, he's a top scorer at his best. Even not at his best, he's probably the top 3 or 4 ruck, as we saw last year. So he doesn't come cheaply, but as far as Goldstein numbers come, I think, like Fife, no discounts, no anything like that, but just maybe a few niggles and things like that have seen him produce numbers that are below his best, and I think that puts him in a price range that is pretty appealing. So Goldstein will be in my side, and he should definitely be in yours as well. And finally, and I think probably if we're speaking first pick players in the whole of SuperCoach 2017, I'd probably put this man as my first pick, and it's Luke Dalhouse. I don't think you can go past him as a forward option. He's an absolute jet. Again, had a few injury worries last year, nothing serious, but just got injured I think around round 12, missed your month or so, came back well and had some good finals, but particularly in the back end of the home and away season, didn't absolutely set the world on fire, just had good sort of 80s to 100 numbers. But just go back and look at the start of his last year, absolutely on fire, and that was backing up the 105 that we saw I think in 2015. So he's no stranger to big numbers, he's consistent, he's an inside mid, he can kick goals, he'll tackle for you as well. He does it all, he always finds a way to get points. It's not as if he's going to get tagged and he'll just have a quiet game. He'll tackle, he'll sneak forward, and he's a real energy and barometer player for the doggies. So, and of course the kicker is the fact that he's a forward. I mean, that's what absolutely just locks him in like no other. You'll pay $520,000 for him, which I think is pretty good. Again, following the trend of Goldstein and Fife, they're great players that we know are possibly going to go even better than their previous numbers, but for whatever reason, the odd game or two where they weren't at their full fitness and things like that, they've returned an average which is perhaps 7-6 points below their best. Goldstein, you could probably argue, is 15 points below what he's capable of, but nonetheless I think Dalhouse will be many of people's number one forward, and I think he'll be the number one forward in the competition, and therefore you should be snapping him up from round one. No point trying to get on him halfway through the season because he's nicely priced now and he is traditionally quite consistent, so I don't think you're going to cop a really low game from him and get him up at a cheaper price. So I think Dalhouse, absolute lock, and you should certainly be getting on him for your forward line. So there's a few guys for you to just, when you're picking your side, there's some no-brainers for you. A lot of people, I'm not telling them anything they don't know, because if you know your SuperCoach and you've been doing it over the last couple of months at least, you already know that those guys are well entrenched into your side. But if you're just getting stuck into it, you've just got onto the new format for SuperCoach and you're getting stuck into it now, then I think you can listen to this video and at least build your squad around those guys. You got a must-have defender, a couple of bargain mids that we know are proven superstars, the lock in the ruck and the lock in your forward line. So I think they're absolute must-haves. Certainly if you disagree, let me know. I feel they're must-haves. I reckon many people will agree, but if you don't, certainly mount a case as to why they're not no-brain selections and you just don't necessarily have to have them. Some people may disagree. That's what makes SuperCoach great. Everyone obviously believes that certain things are must-haves, others don't. Never do we see players in 80% of sides. I think even Ablett at his very best was probably nudging around his 65%. There's always a few people who disagree with the mainstream of thinking, and I think you know, if you do, certainly let me know. But that's about it. Just thought I'd do something that could be of interest, as SuperCoach has been released somewhat recently, at least free to the public. So feel free to give me your thoughts on the video, any video ideas you'd like to see through the pre-season. I've got a couple of ideas in mind that I'll get stuck into shortly, but certainly give me any thoughts. If there's a video that you particularly would like to see or an issue discussed, let me know. Subscribe to the video, or the channel I should say. We're edging towards 400 subs, which is fantastic. Really had some good numbers over the last week or so, which is great to see. So hopefully those trends can continue. Give the video a like, comment, share, do all that good stuff, and of course subscribe, and I'll catch you guys soon.